The galaxy was quiet. For years, humanity had lived in peace, its people focused on exploring the stars and expanding their knowledge. They had no idea that this peace was about to be shattered. Far beyond the outer reaches of Earth, in the darkest corners of the galaxy, something was stirring. And it wasn't friendly. The alien races that roamed the stars had long known about Earth. They had heard the rumors, the whispers of a species that had survived against all odds, that had built empires and overcome impossible challenges. But until now, they had dismissed humanity as nothing more than a primitive race, a blip in the grand scale of the universe. They were wrong. It all started when a fleet of alien warships appeared on the outer rim of the galaxy, silently moving toward Earth. The galaxy had been at peace for so long that no one thought it possible that war could come again. The aliens, called the Zarka, were known for their brutality, their thirst for conquest. They had swept through entire star systems before, leaving nothing but ruins behind. Now, Earth would be next. On Earth, the news spread like wildfire. Governments scrambled to prepare for an attack, but they were unsure how to defend against such an overwhelming force. Earth's military was strong, but it had never faced a threat like this. There was no way to know what the Zarka had planned, but one thing was certain: they were not coming for peace. In the calm before the storm, people tried to go on with their lives. Streets were crowded with people, going about their business, unaware that the galaxy was about to change forever. The leaders of Earth were meeting in secret, formulating a plan, but no one knew what to expect. At the same time, the Zarka watched from the shadows. They had been tracking humanity for years, studying their technology, their strategies, their history. They knew Earth's military was capable, but they also knew that humanity had a reputation for surprising its enemies. The Zarka had never been defeated before, but they weren't worried. No one had ever stood up to them for long. Humanity's time would come, they thought. It was just a matter of when. Meanwhile, on Earth, scientists, engineers, and strategists worked tirelessly to come up with a plan. The government was divided. Some wanted to fight back immediately, while others advocated for diplomacy, even though everyone knew it was unlikely to work. But there was no time for hesitation. The Zarka were coming. The first signs of the invasion were small. A few ships appeared at the edge of Earth's territory, seemingly just watching, waiting. Then came the reports from the outer colonies. Ships had gone missing. Communications had been cut off. Earth's outposts on Mars, on the moons of Jupiter, on distant planets, none of them could confirm what was happening, but the silence spoke volumes. It was then that Earth's military made a shocking discovery. The Zarka had a fleet, a massive one, and it was heading directly toward Earth. Every ship, every soldier, every piece of equipment would be needed. There was no room for mistakes. The calm before the storm was gone. Families gathered in their homes, not knowing what to expect. Some people believed Earth could fight off the invaders, while others feared the worst. The streets were filled with whispers, but no one knew how this story would end. Would humanity survive? Would they be able to defend their world against a foe so powerful, so terrifying, that it could crush entire civilizations with ease? As the first wave of the Zarka fleet approached, Earth held its breath. The military readied its defenses. Ships were launched, weapons were tested, and plans were put into action. But no one was ready for what would come next. No one had anticipated the fury of the battle that was about to unfold. The Zarka were powerful, yes, but humanity had something they didn't understand: the will to survive. As the sun set over Earth, the world seemed peaceful. But above the planet, in the blackness of space, the first signs of a deadly conflict began to show. The galaxy's fate and humanity's survival now depended on one thing: how well Earth could fight back. The storm was coming, and humanity had no choice but to face it head-on. But they had one advantage the Zarka didn't count on: the heart of a warrior. The calm before the storm was over. The battle for survival had begun. The Zarka fleet, a vast armada of black ships, hovered in orbit around Earth. Their sleek, angular forms gleamed ominously in the darkness of space. They were cold, calculating, and relentless. For centuries, they had swept across the galaxy, conquering world after world, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. Now, Earth had become their next target. On the ground, Earth's military was on high alert. The world's leaders had come together to form a united front. But the truth was clear. No one knew exactly how to face the Xarka. Despite their technological advancements, Earth's military was nowhere near as advanced as the Xarka war machines. But Earth's greatest strength wasn't in its technology. It was in its people. And humanity was willing to fight to the last man, woman, and child. As the Xarka began to launch their first wave of attacks, Earth's defense systems kicked into action. The sky above Earth erupted with the sounds of battle as both sides engaged in a deadly dance. The Xarka warships unleashed their weapons, sending massive energy blasts toward Earth's military bases, obliterating anything in their path. Earth's ships retaliated, launching missiles and laser beams toward the enemy fleet. The sky was lit up with explosions as both sides clashed in a battle for survival. The sheer power of the Xarka weapons was overwhelming, but humanity fought back with every ounce of strength it had. The fight was far from over, and neither side was willing to surrender. In the heart of the battle, Commander Alex Reed, one of Earth's top pilots, was locked in a fierce dogfight with a Xarka fighter. His ship, the Eagle 7, darted through the chaos of the battlefield, narrowly avoiding enemy fire. His heart raced as he took aim and fired, sending a missile crashing into the enemy ship's hull. It exploded in a burst of fiery brilliance, and Reed let out a breath of relief. But the victory was short-lived. The Xarka were relentless, and they didn't give up easily. More ships poured from the enemy fleet, and the battle raged on. Earth's forces, though determined, were outmatched. But they had something the Xarka hadn't counted on: unity. Back on Earth, the world watched in fear and awe as the battle unfolded. People held their breath as they saw their cities attacked, their families threatened, and their homes destroyed. But they didn't give up. They rallied around their soldiers, supporting them in any way they could. Even though the battle seemed hopeless, the human spirit was unwavering. The first few hours of the conflict were chaotic. The Xarka had taken control of the skies, but humanity was not about to back down. Earth's military worked together, using every tactic they could think of to counter the enemy's superior firepower. Every ship, every soldier, every resource was thrown into the fight, and the battle continued to rage. Back in space, Reed was growing frustrated. His ship was damaged, and the enemy was relentless. But he couldn't stop fighting. The lives of millions were on the line. He knew that if Earth was to survive, they had to hit the Xarka where it hurt the most. And that meant targeting their flagship, the heart of the enemy fleet. Reed's commander, General Harrison, gave the order to launch a full-scale assault on the Xarka flagship. It was humanity's last hope. If they could take down the flagship, they might be able to break the Xarka's hold on the galaxy. But it would take everything they had. As the Eagle 7 and other ships made their way toward the Xarka flagship, they encountered fierce resistance. The Xarka fought with an unrelenting fury, determined to crush humanity's rebellion. But the humans pressed on, dodging enemy fire and returning it with everything they had. It was a battle of wills. The Xarka had underestimated Earth's resolve, and now they were paying the price. Earth's forces fought back with everything they could muster, pushing the enemy fleet back inch by inch. It was a battle unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, and the stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined. In the end, it wasn't just technology or firepower that would decide the outcome of the battle. It was the strength of humanity's spirit. No matter how tough the fight, no matter how impossible the odds, humanity had a resolve that the Xarka simply could not understand. It was that spirit that would ultimately lead to their downfall. As the battle continued to rage on, Reed knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning. The Xarka had made a grave mistake by underestimating humanity, and they would soon realize that they had awakened a force they couldn't control. The storm had arrived, and the universe would never be the same again. The battle for Earth raged on, and the Xarka forces seemed unstoppable. With each passing minute, more of Earth's cities fell to the relentless barrage of alien firepower. Humanity had been pushed to its limits, but it was clear that they would not yield. Even as the destruction seemed to mount, there was an undeniable resolve in the hearts of Earth's defenders. This was not the end. This was only the beginning of a fight for survival. Commander Alex Reed, his hand steady on the controls of the Eagle 7, could feel the weight of the battle pressing in on him. His ship had taken a pounding, and the hull was badly damaged. Yet he pressed on, pushing his ship to its limits, his determination unwavering. His thoughts raced, his mind focused on one thing only: the Xarka flagship. Earth's forces were scattered across the battlefield, struggling to hold their ground against the superior Xarka fleet. Every ship was critical now, and every pilot had a role to play. But the Xarka were cunning. They adapted quickly, and they knew how to exploit weaknesses. The humans were brave, yes, but that bravery had to be more than just heart. It had to be tactical. It had to be precise, and Alex knew it was up to him to make sure Earth's forces didn't falter. "Reed, we're with you," came the crackling voice of General Harrison over the comms. "We're all in this together. Keep pushing toward the flagship. We're counting on you." His words fueled Reed's determination. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't alone. Humanity wasn't alone. The world, from every corner, was watching, praying, and fighting alongside them. The stakes had never been higher. The Xarka had invaded their world, attacked their families, destroyed their cities. But Earth had something the aliens didn't: unity. As Reed and his squadron of fighters made their way toward the flagship, they encountered heavy resistance. Xarka warships blocked their path, opening fire without hesitation. But this was different. Earth's forces were adapting, learning, and fighting smarter with each passing moment. The Xarka were skilled, their tactics precise, but Reed noticed something. There was a crack in their strategy, a small opening. The humans had been underestimating their enemies for too long. But now, the humans had found their rhythm. "Take evasive action." Reed barked into the comms as he dove to the side, narrowly missing a blast from an incoming enemy ship. The dogfight was relentless, ships twisting and turning in the darkness of space, laser beams lighting up the void as both sides fought for dominance. In the distance, Reed saw it: the Xarka flagship, towering above the rest of the fleet. It was massive, a dark colossus surrounded by a swarm of fighter ships. This was the heart of the invasion, the beating core of their might. If they could take it down, it would cripple the Xarka's entire assault. But getting to it was no easy feat. The flagship was heavily guarded, its weapons more powerful than anything the humans had ever seen. But Reed was not deterred. He had a plan. "Everyone on me," he commanded. "We push forward. We break through the defense perimeter. We hit them where it hurts." The rest of the squadron rallied behind him, following his lead as they broke through the chaos. Missiles and blasts exploded all around them, but Reed's focus never wavered. He knew they had one chance to win this. One shot. And if they failed, Earth would fall. They maneuvered closer and closer to the flagship, avoiding the endless fire from the surrounding ships. Reed's pulse quickened. He knew the risks. He knew the odds were against them. But the enemy's arrogance was their weakness. "I'm in range," Reed said, his voice tight with concentration. He fired a series of missiles toward the flagship's heavily protected shields, hoping to break through. Each missile exploded against the shields, sending shockwaves through the air. But the flagship's defenses held strong. The Xarka flagship's commander, a towering alien with sleek black armor, watched as the battle unfolded. His many eyes narrowed with contempt. He had believed Earth's forces would crumble under pressure. But now, he was beginning to realize the gravity of his mistake. The humans were far more formidable than he had anticipated, and their desperation, their unity, made them unpredictable. "Reinforce the shields," the Xarca commander ordered. "Do not let them breach our defenses." But Reed wasn't finished. The battle was far from over. "We need to hit them harder," he muttered to himself, scanning the chaotic battlefield around him. His mind raced. He had one more option, a risky move that could turn the tide of the war, but it would require total precision. "Reed, what are you thinking?" General Harrison asked over the comms, sensing the change in his tone. "I've got an idea, sir. It's all or nothing," Reed replied, his voice determined. "I'm going to take the fight to them." With a sudden burst of speed, Reed dove directly toward the flagship, disregarding the incoming fire from enemy ships. His ship shook with every blast, but he remained focused. He knew this was their chance. If he could get close enough, he could disable the flagship's central core. The Xarca forces tried to intercept him, but Reed was faster. With the skills of a seasoned pilot, he twisted his ship around, evading their attacks and closing in on the flagship. His fingers hovered over the firing controls. He was so close. This was it. Then, with a single final push, Reed released every missile he had left in his arsenal. The missiles slammed into the flagship's core, causing an explosion that shook the very fabric of space. The Xarca flagship began to crumble, its dark silhouette falling to pieces. The enemy fleet faltered, their coordination disrupted by the loss of their command center. The tide of the battle had shifted. For the first time in hours, the humans began to feel hope. The Xarca were reeling. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. But Reed knew the fight was far from over. This was just the beginning. The humans had won a crucial battle, but the war was still raging across Earth. Yet, as long as humanity had the will to fight, they had a chance. And in the face of overwhelming odds, one thing was certain: humanity would never give up. The aftermath of the massive explosion that destroyed the Xarca flagship echoed across the battlefield. The sudden silence that followed the eruption felt like a strange and eerie calm. Commander Alex Reed's ship, battered and broken, drifted through the wreckage of the Xarca fleet. The once powerful, imposing warships now lay in pieces, floating lifeless in the vastness of space. Reed's heart was still racing, the adrenaline of the battle still coursing through his veins. His hands gripped the controls tightly, sweat beading on his forehead. Despite the victory, there was no time to celebrate. The fight was far from over. His squadron of fighters circled around him, their ships in varying degrees of damage. The Xarca forces were regrouping, preparing for their next wave. "We did it," came the voice of Lieutenant Mara Ross, one of Reed's most trusted pilots, over the comms. Her voice was shaky, but filled with a sense of relief. "We took down their flagship. That's got to count for something, right?" Reed didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared out at the battlefield, taking in the destruction. It was hard to reconcile the scale of the battle with the brief sense of triumph they had just experienced. While the Xarca had been dealt a serious blow, they were far from defeated. "This isn't over yet," Reed finally replied, his voice low and steady. "We've just bought ourselves some time. They'll come back stronger. We need to be ready." Ross was silent for a moment, but Reed could feel her resolve through the comms. "Understood, Commander." Suddenly, a new transmission came through, one that sent a chill down Reed's spine. It was from the highest ranks of Earth's command, General Harrison. "Commander Reed, we've detected something unusual." General Harrison's voice crackled through the line. "We're reading massive energy signatures from deep in Xarca space. It seems they've called for reinforcements. This could be far bigger than we anticipated." Reed's heart sank. He knew what this meant. The Xarca had the technology and the resources to summon more reinforcements from the far reaches of the galaxy. What had been a single battle was now escalating into an all-out war, one that would determine the fate of Earth and its people. "Where are the reinforcements coming from?" Reed asked, trying to keep his voice calm despite the rising tension. He had to focus. He had to think ahead. "The Xarka have mobilized their entire fleet, Commander," General Harrison replied. "They're sending an armada to Earth, and it's going to be here within the next 48 hours. We don't have long." Reed's mind raced. The fight for survival had just entered its most dangerous phase. Earth's forces had dealt a devastating blow to the Xarka, but that would only provoke them. This wasn't just about the war. They were now fighting for their very existence. "We'll need to prepare for the worst," Reed said, his voice firm. "I want all remaining squadrons ready for battle. We'll need every fighter in the air." He looked out into the void, the stars twinkling like distant beacons. His thoughts turned to the millions of people on Earth, unaware of the true scale of the threat coming their way. Reed knew what they were up against now, and the weight of responsibility bore down on him like never before. As the minutes ticked by, the rest of Reed's squadron regrouped, their ships floating silently among the debris of the battle. Some were damaged beyond repair, others barely hanging on. But they were all still alive. That was the most important thing. "What do we do next?" Ross asked, her voice tinged with exhaustion, but still holding the spark of determination. "We've taken down their flagship. Isn't that enough?" Reed shook his head. "The flagship was only a symbol of their power. We've hurt them, but we haven't broken them. They'll come back with everything they've got." As the squadron formed up around Reed, the weight of what was to come pressed on him. He knew they were at a critical juncture, and one wrong move could mean the end. The next few days would be crucial in determining humanity's fate. Suddenly, the calm silence was shattered by a loud alarm blaring through the cockpit. A flashing red light indicated the approach of a massive fleet, even larger than anything Reed had seen before. "It's them," Reed muttered to himself. "The reinforcements are here." The approaching fleet was vast, an unyielding wave of Xarka warships, ready to engulf Earth's defenders. Their fleet was unstoppable, their weapons formidable. But Reed couldn't afford to think like that. Not now. He looked to his squadron, his friends, and his fellow soldiers. They had fought valiantly. And now they had no choice but to fight again. To survive. To protect Earth. "Everyone, listen up," Reed shouted over the comms. "This is it. We fight, we hold the line, and we show them that they made a huge mistake underestimating humanity. We're not going down without a fight." As Reed's squadron readied themselves for the battle ahead, the reality of the situation hit home. The Xarka were coming for them. But humanity wasn't ready to give up. Not now. Not ever. The last battle had been a turning point, but this would be the true test. Would Earth's defenders be able to stand against the full might of the Xarka armada? The fate of their world was hanging in the balance, and Commander Reed knew one thing for sure. They were in for the fight of their lives. The calm before the storm was over. And now the final war for Earth had begun. The Xarka armada loomed on the horizon like a tidal wave, an unstoppable force that threatened to wipe out everything in its path. Commander Reed sat in his cockpit, staring at the approaching fleet, his knuckles white as they gripped the controls. The silence was deafening, each passing second a reminder of how little time they had left. The weight of the moment pressed heavily on his shoulders, but there was no turning back now. "Commander, we've got incoming." Lieutenant Ross's voice crackled through the comms, sharp with urgency. "They've already deployed their fighter squadrons." Reed's heart rate quickened as he watched the first wave of Xarka fighters break away from the massive warships, streaking toward Earth's defense lines like a swarm of angry hornets. The battle was about to begin, and Earth was outnumbered. "Ready your ships," Reed ordered. "We fight with everything we have. No surrender." He opened a secure channel to General Harrison, his mind racing. "General, we can hold them off, but we need more reinforcements. What's the status on our backup?" "We've got every available ship heading your way, Commander." Harrison's voice came back, steady but filled with the same tension Reed felt. "But we're still vastly outnumbered. "You'll need to buy us some time." Reed didn't respond right away. He didn't need to. He knew the stakes. Earth's survival depended on this moment. "All right, Squadron," Reed said, locking his focus on the incoming Jarka forces. "We'll hold the line here. It's going to get ugly, but we've survived worse. Stay sharp. Don't let them get past us." The rest of the squadron responded with a chorus of affirmatives, their voices filled with resolve. They had faced many battles before, but nothing like this. The sheer size of the Jarka fleet was unlike anything they had encountered. The battle was no longer just about winning. It was about survival. The first wave of Jarka fighters dove toward Reed's squadron, their sleek ships weaving in and out of the chaotic void of space, their weapons firing with deadly precision. The sky was a blur of laser fire and explosions, as ships from both sides exchanged volleys of deadly energy. The staccato rhythm of fire echoed in Reed's ears, and the whole world outside his cockpit turned into a violent storm. "Watch your six," Ross shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Reed glanced to his left just in time to see a Jarka fighter firing at him. Without thinking, he pulled hard on the controls, jerking his ship out of the path of the blast. He fired back, striking the enemy fighter square in the center of its hull. It exploded in a flash of brilliant light, leaving nothing but debris behind. The battle raged on, each moment bringing new challenges and fresh dangers. Reed's heart raced, his senses heightened. The Jarka were relentless, their attack unyielding. But Earth's forces were holding firm. Despite the overwhelming numbers, humanity's spirit was unbreakable. They fought with everything they had, refusing to back down. Reed's fighter shook violently as a nearby Jarka ship exploded in a blinding burst of light. His squadron was taking hits, but they weren't faltering. They continued to press forward, pushing the Jarka back inch by inch. Every ship destroyed, every Jarka fighter downed, was a small victory. But Reed knew that the tide could turn in an instant. Then, just as the battle seemed to reach its peak, a new transmission came through, a voice Reed didn't recognize. "Commander Reed, this is Admiral Larson. We've got a surprise for you." Reed's eyes widened as the Admiral's message continued. "We've just received word from the Galactic Council. We've secured a temporary ceasefire with the Jarka. They've agreed to hold off their advance in exchange for negotiations." Reed's mind raced. A ceasefire. At a time like this, it didn't make sense. The Jarka had just launched their most devastating assault, and now they were offering peace talks. Was it a trick? "Are you saying we should stop fighting?" Reed asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "Are you serious?" "Negative, Commander," Admiral Larson quickly replied. "But you need to know. We've learned something. The Jarka are in a vulnerable position. Their resources are stretched thin, and they're afraid. We're close to getting them to back off for good. Just hold the line a little longer." Reed's mind swirled with confusion. The Jarka had never shown fear before. Why now? Before he could respond, another transmission came through. This time, it was General Harrison. "We've got movement from Jarka Command," Harrison said urgently. "Their fleet is shifting. It's not a full retreat, but something's changing. It might be a trick, Commander." Reed's heart sank. Was this the beginning of the end, or was it another trap? "Lieutenant Ross, stay on them. Don't give them an inch. Everyone else, hold your ground," Reed ordered. As the battle raged on, Reed couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was unfolding. The stakes had just risen higher than anyone could have imagined. Would the Jarka retreat, or was it a trap designed to lure humanity into a false sense of hope? One thing was certain: the final stand had begun, and humanity had no choice but to fight until the very end. The Jarka fleet had made an unexpected move. Instead of retreating, they seemed to be repositioning, regrouping in a way that Reed could not yet understand. Their massive warships, once charging forward with terrifying force, now hovered in formation, as though they were preparing for something much more calculated. Commander Reed's heart hammered in his chest as he watched the situation unfold on his screen. It was as if the enemy was playing a game, one that was far more dangerous than anything humanity had encountered so far. The battlefield, once chaotic and frantic, had suddenly grown eerily quiet. The only sound was the hum of his ship's engines, the static crackle of communications, and the distant explosions of the ongoing firefight. "Commander, what's happening?" Lieutenant Ross's voice was tense, her words sharp with unease. "They've stopped advancing. Are we winning?" Reed didn't know. He had never seen a battle like this before. The Xarca were ruthless and unpredictable. Could this be the moment they were planning to crush humanity once and for all? Or were they genuinely looking for a way to back down? "I'm not sure," Reed said, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "But I don't like it. Stay alert. Something doesn't feel right." The Xarca ships had formed a perfect line, an impenetrable wall of steel and energy. From the outside, it almost seemed like a signal, as if they were preparing for the final act of this war. Humanity had survived their first wave, but now the real test was beginning. "Commander," Lieutenant Ross suddenly shouted, "Incoming transmission." The message was from Admiral Larson, and it came through clear and sharp, cutting through the static. "Reed, listen carefully." Larson's voice was strained but urgent. "We've just gotten word from our spies. The Xarca are planning something bigger than we thought. They're attempting to summon reinforcements, an entire armada from their home system. But it's not just reinforcements. They're preparing a new weapon, one they believe will be enough to crush humanity for good." Reed's pulse quickened. "What kind of weapon?" "Unknown," Larson replied. "But it's coming, and we need to stop them before it's too late. Our forces are stretched thin. We can't afford to let them regroup. I need you to push forward, Commander. If you wait too long, it will be too late." Reed's mind raced. He knew that if the Xarca succeeded in bringing their new weapon into play, it could change the course of the war in a heartbeat. But how could he stop them without enough forces? The rest of Earth's fleet was in disarray, scattered across the battlefield. There was no way they could mount a proper offensive. The Xarca fleet began to make their move once again, shifting and slowly advancing toward Earth's remaining defenses. Reed could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. It was now or never. "Lieutenant Ross, rally the squadron," Reed ordered, his voice steady but carrying the weight of responsibility. "We're going in. Full throttle." There was no turning back now. If they were going to have any chance of winning this war, they had to stop the Xarca before they could complete whatever plan they had in mind. Reed knew that they were about to enter the final phase of the battle, the endgame. The ships of Earth's remaining fleet began to move in, forming a protective line around the planet. The Xarca pressed forward, their massive ships moving like titans of destruction. Reed's heart pounded as he locked onto the nearest enemy target. "Let's make this count," Reed muttered under his breath. He gave the command, and the squadron broke formation, diving straight into the heart of the Xarca fleet. Laser fire filled the air, streaking across the dark void of space, creating a fiery dance of destruction. Reed's ship shook with every blast, but he kept his focus, his eyes fixed on the enemy before him. His squadron ships followed suit, engaging in a full-on assault. "Take them down," Reed shouted. "Hold nothing back." He fired his weapons, sending a blast straight through the hull of a Xarca warship. It exploded in a ball of fire and debris, but that was only the beginning. The Xarca retaliated immediately, launching counterattacks from every direction. But Reed was undeterred. His team was relentless, pushing forward with unwavering resolve. Every Xarca ship destroyed, every fighter disabled, was a step closer to victory. The stakes had never been higher. Suddenly, the entire battlefield shifted once again. Reed's comm system crackled as General Harrison's voice came through. "Commander, we have an update. The Xarca reinforcements. Something's wrong. They've stopped moving. We've detected a massive energy pulse coming from the center of their fleet. Reed's blood ran cold. This was it. The weapon Larson had warned about. Brace for impact, Reed ordered. But it was too late. A massive shockwave erupted from the heart of the Zarka fleet, a pulse of raw energy that reverberated across the battlefield. It sent Reed's ship careening out of control. Alarms blared, and his vision blurred as the force of the blast shook his entire ship. "Commander, are you all right?" Ross's voice came through, frantic and desperate. Reed forced himself to focus, pulling the ship back into control. He could feel the effects of the blast, but his team was still alive. The Zarka had released their weapon, but humanity hadn't given up. "This isn't over," Reed muttered, the weight of his words heavy with the promise of a final showdown. The shockwave from the Zarka's weapon had rattled every ship in Earth's fleet, and the galaxy itself seemed to tremble. The skies over Earth, once calm and hopeful, had now become the battleground for humanity's survival. As Reed's ship lurched back into control, the silence that followed the massive energy pulse was almost unbearable. For a moment, there was nothing but the quiet hum of the ship's engines. But Reed knew it was only a fleeting moment of peace. The Zarka were not finished. They were relentless, and this new weapon they had unleashed was only the beginning of their final assault. "Commander, what's our next move?" Lieutenant Ross's voice was steady, but Reed could hear the edge of fear in her words. They had just survived the first wave of destruction, but humanity had faced the impossible before. And this time, there was no turning back. Reed's hands tightened around the controls as he scanned the battlefield. The Zarka fleet was not retreating, not even slowing down. They were pressing forward, pushing toward Earth's last remaining defenses. Reed had to act fast, or humanity would be swallowed by the darkness of this war. "Lieutenant, gather the squadron," Reed ordered, his voice steady but filled with determination. "We're going for the heart of their fleet. If we don't take out their command ship, we're done for." It was a risk, one that would put them all in grave danger. But Reed had no choice. He knew the Zarka were too powerful to defeat with brute force alone. If they could take out the command ship, they might have a chance to disrupt the entire Zarka war effort. "Understood, Commander," Ross replied, her tone resolute. "We'll follow your lead." The squadron quickly regrouped, and Reed led them toward the heart of the Zarka fleet. As they neared their target, Reed's heart raced. The massive Zarka command ship loomed ahead, surrounded by a swarm of smaller warships and heavy defenses. It was a fortress, the nerve center of the Zarka military machine. Destroying it would be no easy task. But Reed had a plan. "Lock onto their primary weapons array," Reed ordered. "We're going for the weak spot." With a flash of light, the squadron's weapons fired, cutting through the darkness of space. Each blast hit its target with pinpoint accuracy, striking the Zarka defenses. But it wasn't enough. The Zarka command ship's shields held firm, blocking their attacks and pushing back the squadron's advance. "Keep firing," Reed shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. They couldn't afford to waste any more time. The Zarka were getting closer, and humanity's defenses were crumbling under the pressure. Then, in a moment of clarity, Reed saw it. A weakness, an exposed section of the command ship's hull, just beneath its main reactor. If they could hit it directly, they might be able to breach the ship and destroy its core, but it would take everything they had. "Lieutenant, set a course for the reactor," Reed ordered, his voice filled with urgency. Ross hesitated for a split second before responding. "A risky move, Commander, but we're with you." The squadron adjusted their course, locking onto the exposed section of the Zarka command ship. The Zarka didn't give up easily, though. They retaliated, sending wave after wave of fighters to intercept the human squadron. But Reed's team held strong, cutting through the opposition as they moved closer to their target. "Fire!" Reed yelled as the ships opened up with everything they had. The concentrated firepower of the squadron hit the Zarka command ship's exposed hull with devastating force. Sparks flew as the blast tore through the metal, creating a massive hole in the side of the ship. The lights of the battlefield flickered as the Zarka fleet reeled in response to the sudden vulnerability of their command ship. But the Zarka were not done yet. As the hole in the command ship widened, a surge of energy pulsed from within. Reed's eyes widened as he saw the Zarka's desperate move. A self-destruct sequence had been initiated. The command ship was about to explode, and with it, the Zarka's final chance to dominate the galaxy. "Get out of there. Now!" Reed screamed. The squadron scrambled to break away from the explosion, their ships pushing to the limit as the Zarka command ship began to implode. In the blink of an eye, a massive fireball erupted in space, sending shockwaves through the entire battlefield. The force of the explosion rattled every ship in Reed's squadron, but they had managed to escape, barely. As the smoke of the explosion cleared, Reed looked around. The Zarka fleet was in disarray. The heart of their military power had been destroyed. The remaining ships began to scatter, their unity shattered in the wake of their command ship's demise. For the first time in days, Reed allowed himself to breathe. The war wasn't over, but humanity had taken the first step toward victory. The Zarka, once invincible, had been defeated, not by brute force or superior technology, but by the ingenuity and courage of humanity. Reed knew the galaxy would never forget this day. But there was no time to celebrate. The war was far from over. The Zarka may have been weakened, but they were not yet finished. Humanity would have to remain vigilant. There was still more to fight for, and Reed and his squadron would be ready. Humanity had made its mark on the galaxy, and now there would be no turning back.